Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest is a psychologist, inspirational speaker, author and researcher from Montreal. Her expertise is working with parents who have intellectual disabilities. In 2012, she sustained a spinal cord injury in a car accident. Mother to a 16-month-old at the time, the accident and subsequent injuries gave her an interesting perspective on parenting and disability. Marjorie believes that focusing on our strengths of character can lead to living a more fulfilling life. With her family, she learned to be a solution finder and to make her world more accessible. With all of her experiences, she has written a book called Mum on Wheels, which is just an awesome book talking about her experiences, her mental downfall regarding the traumatic accident and how she built herself up from that day to this. Hi, welcome Marjorie Aunos to the podcast. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm speaking to you and to all of your audience.
I know. And oh my God, what a journey getting you on the podcast has been. We booked this just for everyone who's listening. We booked this way back in June, July, and I got COVID. And so I was in bed for 3 days and had to cancel on you. And then life just got away with us both. And by the time we got round to booking this, we're now in October. So I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much. Look, tell everyone a little bit about your journey, because it is an amazing, crazy journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I think that pretty much, I love stories. So I think that everybody's story is fascinating. And we all go through a journey. My journey was an interesting one in terms of getting to become a mom, which started with me not being so sure I wanted to be a mom. And one day, I fell in love with a man who was older than me and already had his children. And then when I hit 30, I felt the urge that I needed to become a mom. And so I left that man who didn't want to have any other children. And I went on to my journey of becoming a mom on my own.
Wow.
And so that led me to doing in vitro fertilization. And
which is hard, right? Because it's
a hard process,
lots of drugs and and all. I don't know, because I didn't go there. I mean, I was very lucky at 43 to have my kid, but yeah, I did consider IVF because I was in a similar situation to you. I'd been with a guy for 8 years, didn't want children, and I did. I was a bit later than you. I wish I'd started at 30. And I was 40. And I went, this is a really big urge in me and I need to leave. And maybe IVF is what I need to do. And sometimes there are sometimes where I wish I had done IVF. But anyway, sorry, we digress. Carry on. So you decided IVF.
Yeah. So I decided IVF and it took eight rounds. Actually, it was
8
in vitro fertilization. So no, but I mean, so
that is your egg, but you choose a sperm donor.
That's right.
That
exactly.
sort of thing. IVF is helping a couple to have a baby. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah.
And so, so I had to pick a donor, and I did that with my girlfriends, and we made it a pizza party. Let's pick, who is going to be the donor and what qualifications do we want him to have, what attributes, is looks important? Are we going to pick like someone with blue eyes, or we don't care? So we had fun with it. And that was the most fun part, actually. Yeah. And so eight times over 10 months. But before that, I had like some tests to be done. So, I mean, in all, it took 2 years, and it took 2 years, and then I got pregnant, and I was very fortunate. It was, in my mind, it was probably the last time that I was going to do this if it wasn't working. And it's the time that I got pregnant.
Bang. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So I did that.
Yeah.
And then,
you had your wonderful son.
I had my wonderful son that I named Thomas, beautiful little boy. And 16 months after he was born, I was in a car accident. Yes. And I became paraplegic.
Which, like, on its own is horrendous. And to deal with all of that without having a child. But you then had, 16-month-old child.
Yeah.
On your own, basically, as a single mum, because you had your child with as an in vitro baby, and dealing with all of that. So, oh my God! So, how did you deal with it? I mean, was your family close by, or were they?
Yeah, well, my parents were retired, and it had been a few years, and they had like the beautiful cottage, and that's actually where I had my car accident. Beautiful cottage, and they had like a little apartment close by to my place, because they were like, well, if you want us to come around and for like plays and activities and hockey season and so forth, to be there with Thomas. So they were close by, but technically they were living at the cottage. So not in Montreal, not in my city. And when the accident happened, well, oh boy, that derailed pretty much everybody's plan. My parents are just like wonderful people. And so they decided, now the apartment is actually not even their apartment, because they are moving in my house. Because for 6 months I was in the hospital or in a rehabilitation center. And so for the first 6 months, I wasn't raising my kid.
Well, that's right. Because like, it isn't as though you just had the accident and then was home the next day. I mean, you had the accident and you were in hospital for a considerable amount of time. I mean, like, could you have died in this accident?
Oh yeah, I was very close to dying. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I barely.
That's scary. Yeah. And so you were in the hospital. When did your son see you after the accident? Like, how long was it till, because was it a week? Because I mean, I'm sure, sorry to put this that way, but I'm sure you were pretty messed up, right? Because you would have been battered and bruised from the accident. You had a spinal cord injury, which would have been scary in itself. I'm sure there's certain ways that they would need to set you within the bed that, and he's 16 months.
Yeah. So all of that is true. Look, when I had the accident, within like 10 hours, I was in the operating room, and they operated on my spine, consolidated my spine, both in my neck and in my back, to make sure that I wouldn't have further injuries. But you're right. I mean, I had like, my pelvis was broken, so I was just operated on. And yet in my mind, for some reason, I thought, I'm going to be home soon. And so I kept saying to my mom, don't bring Thomas to the hospital. He's going to see me and he's going to be scared. Because I had machines everywhere. I had like tubes coming out of my arms everywhere, on both my arms. I was in so much pain and paralyzed, which I didn't like think that was a problem. But to me, it was like the pain where I couldn't even like prop myself up in the bed. Being moved by nurses and orderlies was excruciating. And so I was like, I won't be able to hug him. I won't be able to, comfort him if you get scared. So don't bring him. I'll be home soon. But I kept crying and crying every time I would wake up. And so my nurse, because I was in intensive care, and my nurse, after 5 days, said to my mom, I don't care what she said to you, your daughter, she needs to be reminded of why she survived the car accident. And so you need to bring her son, and they need to figure it out together. And so if he gets scared, she needs to figure it out how, like, she's going to comfort him. And he needs to figure out that mommy, may look different or may like move differently, but it's still mommy. And so it was really about sort of that fine balance of sort of like making it as we go along. And so my mom brought Thomas, and he was 16 months old. And of course he was petrified to a point that he tried to climb over my mom's shoulder.
Oh no.
To escape me, because he didn't want to touch me. He didn't want to sit on the bed. He didn't want to do anything. And of course I was bawling, and sort of telling my mom, like, just get him out of here. He obviously like just needs comforting, and he can't get it here. And so she passed my son to my dad, and she came back in the room, and she said, from now on, I will bring your son every single day. And I don't care if it lasts 1 minute, 2 minutes or longer, but it will like be until he gets used to you again, and until he's not scared.
Yeah. And how long did that take then for him to adapt to the situation?
Yeah, so I would say that I was in the hospital 1 month. And by the time that I was done the hospital and gone to rehab, he was already much better in terms of being in my room and being in my company. And so we did little steps, right? So at first it was like a 2 minute, and it was like in my mom's arms, and it was me reading a book. So we tried to incorporate sort of an activity that he liked, where it was me singing. It went on to, sort of him being in his high chair near my bed, and we were playing blocks, let's say. And then my parents were in the room, but not close by. Then it was like still in the high chair with blocks and books, and my parents outside of my room, until he was able to sort of be with me and play with me, and sort of know that, for example, throwing blocks onto the floor, which, they all do at that age. And what do we do as parents? We automatically pick it up and put it back on the high chair. Well, he had to learn that with me now, we couldn't do that anymore, because guess what? The blocks are going to stay on the floor. So if you want to play that game, the game has different rules, and we need to sort of like change the game, because the rules are different.
Wow. And can he remember any of this?
No, he can't.
Which is
so he only knows the stories that I tell. Yeah.
It's unbelievable how they're developing and they're absorbing everything around them. But things and events like that just seem to, not disappear, because I'm sure they're sort of there, but that they just accept them and they just get on with it. It's like I split with my ex when my son was 2. And he's asked a few times, well, why doesn't Daddy live with us? But he sort of has accepted it as that's how it works for us. It's very bizarre.
It's the new normal. Yeah. So in his room, even to now, he has a picture of me, pregnant, standing up. There are several pictures on our walls where I'm actually sort of holding him and teaching him how to walk. So he knows that those pictures exist. He knows that I existed as a standing, walking person. But it's now sort of ingrained. It's like mummy's on wheel, and this is who mom is, and that's it.
Oh my God! So look, how did you deal with all of this, like mentally and stuff? I mean, what was the fallout for you? Because this is a big change for you. Like, one, you've got to adapt to bringing up your son now, as you said, on wheels, right? And then also, like, did this affect your job? Like, was your world... And also, what about housing and stuff? Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of questions at you, but there's a lot of questions I've got, right? Yes. So here we go. Let me just go back to the original one. How did you deal with it? How did it affect you?
Well, I mean, at the beginning, I think I was just like action mode. I needed to make things good for Thomas. And so I was really like, my focus was Thomas. And so I rapidly, as soon as I was in rehab, it was like, get me stronger, get me big muscles. I need my big triceps so I can like push my ass out of my wheelchair onto my bed when I need to, or onto the car when I need to. So I was focused on that. Then rehab was done. And then it was like, now I need to go back to work because I need to make a living. Because, that's like pretty much the only thing that was stable for me. I'm a psychologist. So for me, it was like, get me back behind a desk that my chair has wheels, big wheels or smaller wheels, because all our chairs have wheels now anyways, right? So when we're at a desk, so it was like, get me behind that desk, I'll be fine. And so in doing all of this, because I was so focused on making things right for Thomas, I basically sort of pushed all the feelings, all the trauma, all the trauma.
I was going to say,
down, and it came back to bite me like 5 years later.
Wow, 5 years. 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I would have thought it would have come back sooner than that. So you just went, right, I need to get on with life because I've got a kid to bring up, which is similar, exactly. Which is similar to what I did. I went, right, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have no family in Australia, but I've got to bring this kid up and I need to make it normal. Right. He has to have a normal, well, whatever normal is nowadays, but I don't want him to be affected. So mine came back to bite me probably a year later though. But I was just like, so determined to like, right, I need to keep this job. I need to like pick him up and take him to daycare. I need to do everything. And I need to be everything that I possibly can be for this kid, get the money in, get the X, Y, and Z. And you don't actually understand that you're not giving yourself time to grieve and to deal with the emotional trauma. Mine was emotional trauma. Well, yours would be emotional trauma, but physical as well. But nothing on the level that you went through. So, wow. So you just got on with it then. Did anyone say anything to you? Like, did anyone go,
oh my God,
what are you doing?
My physiotherapist and my occupational therapist, they kept saying like, you got to stop. You got to digest what just happened. And I was like, I don't have time to digest. Wow. I just need to like make him work. And it's funny because when they gave me my release papers, it was written in the discharge papers. At some point it will come back and Marjorie will have to deal with, the enormity of what just happened. And when that happens, probably work will break down and the rest, and she'll have to sort of deal with it. And they had warned me and they had told me, like, we're writing this in your discharge papers in the hopes that your work at the time, when that will happen, that your work will understand and that there will be accommodations still handed to you at that time.
But also, right, you're a psychologist, right? So you should have,
yep.
I'm sorry, but you should have known, like, did you know in yourself and with your experience, qualifications and everything, did you sort of go, yep, they're right, but I'll be okay? How did, like, you just...
No, in my head, it was like, no.
Wow.
Like, this is bullshit. No, I can do it. If one person can do this, it's me. Because I'm like I'm gritty, I'm resilient. I'm like badass woman. You know, I don't let anything break me or bring me down or keep me down. And that's the vision I had, not realizing that, you know, sometimes when we grow, like, or when we build muscle, you need to rest at some point,
Yeah.
right? You can't always do like your repetition, or else your muscle is going to break down. So, I never, ever in my lifetime before had understood the notion of resting. I had done my PhD in like 4 years, which usually is done in 6.
Wow.
So I had done it like 2 years, like, faster than everybody else. The only time I would say, and I think that you're going to like that, the only time I would say that I learned about the notion of rest and taking, working hard, but playing hard, was the time that I spent a year in Australia.
Oh, wow. Really?
As Australians. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because you know what? I mean, you have the
Tell
beach
me more.
right there. Yeah. You've got the beach, you got the boat. So I was scuba diving like on weekends. Like I was on the beach. Like I could work during the week, but the weekend it was like, or even like at 4:00 when it was time to go home, it was like just watching the water as I'm like in the ferry to bring me back home because I lived in Sydney. My God, that was, I think, the only time in my whole working life where I had a good work-life balance.
I have to say, I think that's one of the reasons I stayed. I've been in Australia 15 years now. And I have to say, I think it's one of the reasons I stay. A beach is like a couple of K down the road from me. So like in the summer, admittedly not now because it's blooming freezing here at the moment. Well, some days it's not, but in the summer, pick my son up, like hopefully, if my job is allowing me, pick my son up early from, pick him up from school or whatever, go to the beach. We go to the beach, Go on the beach for a couple of hours, come home, have dinner, happy days. So, beach at the weekends, like, or anywhere really, because everywhere is very outdoorsy. It's one of the reasons I moved to where I am, because there's baseball, there's basketball, there's AFL, there's soccer, there's rugby, there's so much sports. And I have a boy, right? So at the end of the day, get him out there, knacker him out. It's all good. But yeah, and I love that it's very outdoorsy here. So, well, fair enough. So you just get on with life. Do you have to change your house and everything like that? Because were you living in an apartment or were you actually in a house?
So I was in a house, in a smaller house. It was like those houses that were built for veterans after the Second World War. So very tiny house on a beautiful lot in Montreal, so in the city, and 3 floors.
Oh my God.
And because it's a tiny house, it was not possible to put an elevator in. It would have been anyways very costly if the auto insurance would have done that. So they refused to do that. So very soon, like, I think it was like maybe 4 months after my accident, I was told, you will not be able to return back to your house that you bought just like 6 months ago or like a year ago.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You need to now like find an apartment. And that's what they told me. An apartment, you have like indoor parking, and it's good because I'm in Canada. And so like 6 months of the year we have snow or like heavy rain. And like, so having a garage is like, especially when you're transferring out of your car and you're in a wheelchair, you can't run in. So, so they were trying to sell me on, you need an apartment. Let's buy a condo.
Yeah, because then you can go in and there's a lift that takes you up, and then you can wheel yourself around to the apartment, and there's no stairs within the apartment, etc., etc. Which and I makes sense. But you said,
except that I'm raising a boy. Like, he will want to go to the park, and then what? Like, now, like, you're taking me out of my neighborhood that's family oriented, that has like parks every second block. No.
Oh my God.
It's not going to work for me.
So you stayed in
Yeah.
the house?
So I sold my house. I bought a new house, but this house had like an apartment above. My parents moved in. They sold their apartment. They sold their cottage. They moved in our house that we basically bought, which is a duplex, so two apartments. And we stayed. I moved like one block from my house. Like I still
Which
pass
is
in front of
awesome.
my house.
Which was awesome because you're not leaving the area, but
That's right.
it's your house. So like, and also, I mean, love your parents because it was a massive upheaval for your parents as well.
Yeah.
But I have to say, you're their kid and you have their grandchild, and they will do anything like we would do for our children. They will do anything for you. So God love them. God love them. So you move house. You don't necessarily change. Did anything change at work?
During that time, no, nothing changed really at work, except that I got a promotion. So I went into a bigger job.
Wow.
Now, when I do things, I do like full on.
I'm getting that. I'm getting that. So okay, let me understand this. You had an accident, which had caused a spinal cord injury. You were in hospital for 6 months. You still get a promotion at work. You change your house. Your life completely changes because you have to adapt to this situation. What about getting to and from work? How did you, I'm assuming work wasn't just round the corner from the new house, although it may be.
It was about 10 minutes away by car. And I, at that point, did not want to drive ever again.
Well, yeah.
And so for a long time, my parents were the one driving me to and back from work.
God love them. With your son, obviously, in the car or whatever.
Well, my son was going to daycare, so they would drop one and then drop the other one. Until I told the auto insurance, now you need to pay for my transport until I'm able to drive myself, because, my parents can't do this all the time. And so they did that for a while. So we did what they call adapted transport,
which has the hand controls on it. Is that what they did? Did they do hand controls on the car, or were you still not driving at
now
that point?
When I'm driving now, but for before I got back behind the wheel myself, I had basically taxis that were coming to pick me up and drive me back.
Wow. Because side story, digression here, everyone, watch out. I used to date a guy when I was 21 who had a spinal cord injury from a quad bike, and his business was fitting those adapter things to cars. I think he owned the business and other people did it, I think. But yeah. So, so I know all about those. And obviously he drove a very, this guy, he's got a spinal cord injury and you'd think he'd slow down on his life. I don't know. He's like you, right? Like he went, right, no, I'm going to get a really fast car. So he drove a really fast, top of the range, fast car with hand controls in it. So it was very... And it was crazy. But anyway, so we digress. Okay, so 5 years on then, everything imploded. What happened?
Work changed. So there's some work conditions that changed. And then I couldn't keep up anymore. My boss moved, changed position. And I got a new boss, and it was like my whole team had changed. The new boss didn't really know me, who I was, and I felt like I needed to prove something. And so I was just trying to, work and show that I was like a good employee, that my disability would not stop me, and so forth. But the job had become so big because of all those changes that I couldn't keep up, and I just burnt. I
Wow.
burnt out.
So what
Yeah.
happened?
I went on leave.
Yeah.
And I went on leave, for years. And so usually
Wow.
we're talking like a burnout, usually you would say 2-3 months, sometimes 6 months. Within a year, most people are back to work. For me, it was like over 5 years.
Oh my gosh. Just not wanting to get out of bed, just being depressed, or like...
Well, I had to wake up. I had to get up in the morning.
Yeah, because you had a
because I
child.
exactly.
And
So I could wake up in the morning, take care of Thomas. He would go off to daycare or to school, and then I would crash and just like be a total mess all day. Then, as soon as like 3 o'clock would hit, I would like pick myself up. Let's go. Gotta look good, pinch my cheeks to make sure that there's color in there. Make sure I wash my face so that he wouldn't see that I cried all day. And then I would be like on for the time that he was back home for homework, for supper, for bath time, for bedtime routines and all of that. And then when he would be in bed, I would be back in my bed until the morning, until I had to be back on for that. Yeah.
And this was you and your body, brain, saying, time to stop, time to deal with your situation. So that was, it wasn't, so the catalyst of all of this was the changes at work, but this was this moment where they wrote in your release papers, she's gonna crash at some point, and have to deal with this. This was you then having to deal with it because the situation at work had put you into a place where you had to deal with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And like during all those years that I worked, I neglected sort of my body, and we hear that, it's one of the messages that we hear the most. You need to exercise, you need to eat right, you need to, which is all true. And it's even more true for someone who's paraplegic, because in my case, my spinal cord injury is high, meaning like I'm just at the border of being quadriplegic. So it's under my armpits. And so the only muscles I have are my arms. So I do have full strength in my arms and the back muscle.
Wow.
That's it.
Okay.
So I don't have any abs. So when I transfer into the car, when I transfer into the bed, when I transfer into the bath, it is all only my arms, biceps and triceps, and my back muscles that does that. And so add additional weight because I'm not exercising, because I'm eating, but like if I continue to eat like a standing person, I'm gaining weight because I'm eating too much. I'm not spending as much, like I don't have muscles that spend the energy that I'm eating. And so I gain a lot of weight. And with that made my transfer slower, more prone for injury. And so physically I had to like just look at what I was doing in terms of like, if I want to be healthy in my mind, I need to be healthy in my body, and I need to like stop running everywhere. And I need to like roll in a way that I control the rolling. So it felt like, you have to imagine like being on top of a slope and I'm on wheels and I let go my arms from the wheels. And the wheelchair is just gaining momentum and momentum and momentum, and it's getting faster and faster. And if I don't put on the brakes, if I don't like slow down the process, I'm just going to crash at the bottom. Well, that's what happened to me. I crashed at the bottom when I needed to learn. And that's why it took me years. I needed to learn that I could use my arms to sort of slow down, that when I'm on a hill like this and going fast, I can decide to just like put a little bit of pressure on my wheels to slow down so that I could see sort of like what's happening around me, so that I could spend time with my son, so that I can like savor the moments. The reason I wanted to have like to be a mom I wanted to spend time with my son. I didn't want to just like sort of like put him to bed when I got home from work. And so I needed to like realize that that's what I was doing, because I was trying to overcompensate or stay as before, but I needed to evolve at that point. And evolve and change and transform into the person that's called Mom on Wheels. And that was okay.
Yeah, and listening to what you just said, I sit there and I think there are so many people, and I suppose single parents are so guilty of this, that career into that, right, I've got to do X, I've got to do Y, I've got to do, A, B, C, D, and E this week, and are moving so fast that they don't actually stop, take a breath, step back, and actually give themselves a break, and go. And it's been a learning curve for me, in the fact that nowadays, when I first started this single parent journey, I used to punish myself. I need to spend more time doing this, but I was working. I need to do that. And I've had to give myself a break and go, no. Do you know what? If you miss one night of working out in the garage, like lifting weights or whatever, it's okay, right? It's one night. Or if you, like with COVID, and I was saying to you earlier, we had 3 days of takeout, right? Because I was so ill, I couldn't get out of bed. And I feel really bad for that, because it's not healthy food for my son. But I'm like, it's 3 days out of 365 days, right? So, yeah, I think stop it and looking after yourself is so important, so important. Because it, like you say, it's mentally, if you look after your body, you're looking after your brain and your mood and all of that sort of thing. So, wow. So crash and burn. How did you get yourself out of it? I mean, it's funny because when you said, you got up, you were there for your son and all of that stuff. I mean, I've been there, admittedly not for the 5 years, but I've not dealt with the trauma that you've dealt with. But I've been there where I've gone, I don't want to do anything today. We'll just pack him off, and then I'm just going to do nothing. Flick through social media, do nothing, have a bit of a suck around the house and stuff like that. But how do you pull yourself out of it for such a long period of time? What did you do?
Yeah. Well, I think it came to me. I mean, I don't think I did something. After like those 4 or 5 years, one of my childhood friends said, "Oh, can I introduce you to my podcast? I'm creating this brand about women and empowerment, and I would like to showcase your story as a story of resilience." And in my head, I was like, well, I'm not very resilient, because like I've been like in pajamas for the past 5 years. But I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, okay, then fine. And so she asked me to tell my story, and I thought, nobody's going to even listen to that. Fine, I'm pleasing my friend and so forth. But that led me to starting to share my story and getting people to sort of say, wow, like your story, I love how you shared that story. It inspired me, or I love how you like framed this. It gave me like a lesson that I could apply for my life. And all of a sudden I saw, and I needed to see, I guess, my value in other people's eyes to be able to recognize it for myself. And so it's really when I started sharing my story, and when I stopped sort of wallowing in the shame that I was feeling about being paraplegic and having all of the health issues that come with being paraplegic. And, when you bring shame into the light, it disappears, because it's sort of like it transforms it to something different. And that's what happened.
Wow.
And so I'm very strong into storytelling now because of that, because I really felt like it transformed me. I also learned about, at the same time, about positive psychology, which is also something. So my work, or my specialty, was to learn about diagnosis and syndromes and working with people who have an intellectual disabilities and autism spectrum disorder. And so as a psychologist, we used, Americans are really good with guidebooks. And so you have a guidebook that's called sort of like the Bible of like the psychiatric disorders, and it all has criterias. So I was all in the, you need to have like those symptoms to have like a label. And positive psychology was introduced to me, as a fluke. I went into a conference one day, and that's what it was talking about. And it was talking about, how we all have like character strength in us, all of us. They've done studies, and we all have 24 character strength throughout the world, no matter like the religion or where we come from. And those strengths, we could pull them out when we need to, for opportunities or when we face adversities. And having that language of being able to say like love, which is a character strength, pulled me out of the car, made me survive the car accident, because I thought of my son right before impact. And I said, I need to survive this for him. I need to be alive because I'm his only parent. And so love, a character strength, pulled me out of the car. And spirituality gave me back my arms, because in the car, when I woke up, I actually couldn't move or feel anything below my neck. And I prayed to God. I don't believe in God, but I prayed to God at that moment. And I asked to have my arms back, because I wanted to be able to take care of my son. I wanted to be able to hold him in my arms. And that character strength, spirituality, made it that I was able to pull whatever, and I got my arms back. And then I went, shit, stop moving. You're going to hurt yourself even more. And that's prudence, another character strength. And so I could go on and pretty much name you the 24 character strength, because at that time I used them all. And since then, and since I know them, I use them all the time, because I'm able to spot how I use them. And that was empowering. And so both storytelling and positive psychology got me out of my funk.
And is that what led you to then write the book, Mom on Wheels?
Yes.
So you sort of
exactly that.
Came out of your funk, found the positive psychology side of things, and then thought, right, well, I'll write a book. I'm just telling people this story, so let's tell more people this story. Is that what happened?
Yeah. So I pretty much was writing all throughout this time. So by the time I wrote or published Mom on Wheels, it had been 10 years after my accident. But really, I had been writing, something would happen, I would write it down. I would have like my iPad, or I would have my iPhone nearby, and I would make a note of like, shit, this happened, fuck my life, and I collect them and never throw them away. And so when I saw the 10-year anniversary happen, or like get soon, and knew of the power of storytelling and knew the power of like character strength, all of a sudden, like everything like went in together, worked beautifully. Because then I had all of these pages. So I had all of those memories, those stories that I could reframe or sort of present in a way that was true to what happened to those stories, but that I could now sort of like also bring in lessons and bring in the notions of character strength. And so the book is really about this combination of all of those snippets of stories of my life. So it's not like a memoir. It's snippets of stories of my life as a mom on wheels with, the lessons learned that I've, how my perspective has changed since, and through the use of positive psychology and character strength.
Yeah, like what you've learned and how you've pulled yourself through from such a life-changing, it's like being a phoenix coming out of the fire sort of description, really. Wow. Exactly. Oh my gosh. And so how has this changed what you do now? Because so you've written a book and you're back doing psychology now, or are you on a completely different journey path?
Yeah, I'm in a different journey path. Right now I'm really focused on, doing keynotes, and basically sharing, what I've learned and sharing those stories. So those stories are in written format, but they're now also sort of part of keynotes, to share them verbally to different audiences, and to share them also to in academia, in businesses, in empowerment type of conferences, so that I could sort of share my stories in the hope that those stories can resonate. And if at least one person in each, of those rooms, I'm happy.
Yeah, you're proving that you had a massive life-changing event, but it didn't bring you down. It you've grown, and admittedly, I must admit, some of those 5-year period of sitting in your gym jams all day must have been hard, but a process that I suppose you needed to work through, but that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you can, no matter how hard it is, educate, get out there and look at positive things and build yourself. And I mean, I must admit, every morning, and I did it just before I started this interview, every morning I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. Doesn't matter what they are. It could be, I wrote down this morning, getting up early, because I started getting up early, because I get me time then, because I can't do the things that I need to do at night. So I'm getting up early. So it's great. Coffee, because that's helping me get up early. I'm so grateful for coffee. That's my little joy in the morning, of making a coffee and then sitting down and doing the stuff that I'm doing. And my son waking me up at 1 a.m. Right. I'm grateful. I don't know why I'm grateful for that. No, I'm grateful for him waking me up with the most crazy, he wakes me up nowadays with the most craziest stories. Apparently he had a nightmare about a book and the number 2 last night. And I'm like, right, okay, switch the light off. Because he came in, he switched all the lights on, and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? And he was like, Mummy, I've had a nightmare about a book and number 2. The number 2 was going so fast. And I'm like, right, okay, fine, switch the light off, go and get your shit, get in a bed, shut up, cuddle down. And then he was off snoring within about 15 minutes. Yeah. And although it's, although when I'm really tired, it can be annoying. I sit there and I go, he's going to be 7 in 7 days or whatever. And I go, how many more nights am I going to have? Well, probably lots. But how many more nights am I going to have where he comes in and wakes me up and goes, Mum, I'm scared, or Mum, I'm this, especially when he gets to a stinky teenager and they're just in their room 24/7. So I sat there and went, no, I'm grateful for him coming through and needing me to a certain extent, because soon he's not going to need me. So I do it every morning, well, nearly every morning, because I just think I live in a fantastic country. I've got the beach down the road. I've got so many fantastic friends around me. I'd love to move my family here, but hey ho, can't have everything. And and so that's all you need. Yeah.
And gratitude is actually a character strength.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yes, it is.
Well, there we go. I've got one. Yes. Happy days. Wow. So it's interesting you say that you wrote over that period of time. You just wrote down everything that you were experiencing, because I've heard a lot of people who sort of said they find a lot of a benefit in just journaling stuff or writing stuff down. And sometimes sitting there at the beginning of the week or the end of the week or every night or every morning or whenever they can grab time and just dumping everything out of their system, positive, negative or whatever, and just writing, actually physically writing, not tapping on but physically writing, although you've got a iPad or whatever, tap away, because it gets everything out of your body, or, you know, like it's like a verbally, like mentally being sick about like the toxicity or the positive stuff in your body. So is that what you found when you were doing?
Yeah, it actually started.
Is that when you did the writing?
It started when I was in the hospital, and I kept getting like those phone calls, which were like, I mean, bless everybody's heart, they were calling to sort of say like, we're here, you know, we can't believe that this happened to you, anything you need. But they kept asking me the same questions. How are you doing? Oh, that must be tough. Oh, what happens to Thomas? And I couldn't say it again. It was just like, you know, I say it once, I can't say it 10 times. And I found Facebook at that point, you know, when I had my accident, I wasn't on Facebook, and I started like writing posts. And so I could write it once, forget about it, release it from my body, just like you said. And everybody was informed. Everybody who wanted to be informed could be informed by checking on my Facebook page. And that's how it started. And I found it so cathartic to just like spew it out, and then get sometimes reactions. And sometimes I would not look at the reactions because it wasn't about getting the reaction. It was really about me sort of like letting it go on the paper. So
while I'm sitting here and you've said that, what would you have wanted people who were contacting you to be doing? Because I understand why they did it, right? Yeah. I completely understand why they would do it, right? Because you want to empathize with, but it just annoyed. Like, I'm sorry, but it would just be annoying. I know where you're coming from, because I would just sit there and go, Jesus Christ, well, I'm doing fine. What do you think? Yeah. Like, It's like, so what would have been a good
it could have been just like, you know, look, I'm there for you. Whatever you need, you let me know. I'll let you know if I can sort of, you know, facilitate anything that you need. Of course, I would love to know how you're doing, but I can understand that you don't really want to talk about it. So if you want to talk about something else, just name the topic. I will, you know, do that. And so it would have been to give me that space and that control, because really at that time it was just like darkness was my life. And so I didn't want to talk about darkness. And actually what I wanted to hear was how they were doing, how life was beautiful and light on the outside, so that I would be reminded of the fact that life was beautiful and there were reasons for living, and that I did do a good decision in asking to survive that car accident.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think we all do. We do it whether people are bereaved or in accidents or whatever. We go, oh, how are you? Oh, we're really sorry, blah, blah, blah. And we sort of dwell on that person. And when really that person doesn't want to be dwelled on. Let me just deal with my shit in my head. How are you doing? So, yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's interesting. So look, if people wanted to see and get your wonderful book, Mom on Wheels, and learn about your journey, read about your journey, which like is an awesome, awesome book. Like, are you out there on Amazon and places like that? Where do they find you?
Yeah, they find me on Amazon, and they can find me on Amazon, .com.au.
Yay. We're included.
Yeah, you are. And, there's a few reviews actually, because I have a few friends from the time that I was living in Sydney.
Oh, God love them.
Ago.
Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah.
And like, do you have a website? Can people like read about who you are and get in touch and like go from there?
Yeah. So I have a website as well. It's called Roll FWD. That's right. So rollforward.com.
Okay.
So they can find me there, or if they have Instagram or Facebook, even LinkedIn, and they can just type my name.
Type your name in and there you are. I'll add all the links anyway. Right. So that's awesome. And look, my final question, Marjorie, and it can't be your own book, but sorry, but what book would you recommend to my listeners and why?
Well, I guess I would recommend it can be like any book.
Yeah, anyone.
Well, one book that I thought of as we were talking about, and it's from a scholar from New Zealand, actually. It's called Resilient Grieving. And she has a very powerful story. She lost her daughter from a car accident when her daughter was like 13, I believe. And so she talks about positive psychology. And she was studying in positive psychology when that happened. And so she talks about how that shaped her way of grieving her daughter and how her family grieved her daughter. And so it's called Resilient Grieving, and it's from Dr. Lucy Hone, Hone. And to me, that was a very helpful and inspiring book, because it showed me that, of course, I didn't have like the same, adversity. And certainly like losing a child is probably, to me anyways, it's far greater than me becoming paraplegic. So seeing her and how she navigated, the grieving process helped me navigate my own grieving process. And so that was like very, very useful and very inspiring.
I've got a massive book list now I need to read. Yeah. There's so many interesting books that my guests are sort of putting out there, and sort of, such a good education process for me. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know I'm saying for my listeners, but personally it's for me as well. So it's great. No, wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Well, look, we did it. We got you on the podcast at last, although it took like nearly 4 or 5 months to get you here. But thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey with me and the listeners. It's just such an amazing story, and you are such an amazing person to have come through all of this. And, it just proves that, with any trauma, you've got to face it and deal with it. And, you delayed it for a period of time through your stubborn, positive personage that you are. But yeah, no. So, look, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that we could rearrange everything and get you back on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
No.
It was a lovely time.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.